Hey there, my fellow tree lovers. Hope you've had an incredible bonsai week to finish off autumn as we head into winter. Welcome to the coolest part of the year for us. Seems to have a bit of a lull at the start, well, unless you have pines, that is, but then it starts to ramp up as we get very busy in the repotting season, and then we start tearing into spring. So the year is flying along. We're halfway, or getting close to halfway being done, but we're halfway through the seasons for the year, and we're on track. I feel like I am anyway. Still got a hell of a lot of pines ahead of me to be plucking, styling, all that sort of stuff, but I feel that I've got a good chunk of them done and I'm on track. Just a reminder for me, I use the May, June time for almost all of my pine work. It's a lovely time when they're nice and flexible. It's easy to work on them. The needles are removed quite easily. The new growth has settled and stopped now, so I know what to remove and what to keep. But it's definitely a busy time, and it might not feel like winter is necessarily here because of the warmer temperatures. Definitely in Melbourne, the days are beautiful. On the weekend, it's been nice and sunny and cool at night, very cool at night, which has a big impact on the trees. But it's those daylight hours. Don't forget that shorten, that have an impact on how our trees react to things. So even though it might be nice, it's definitely not short weather, but it's definitely sunny and nice outside. Things aren't growing quite as quickly as what they were. You know, your lawns, for instance, you walk around parks, you definitely see that things have slowed down a little bit, which means we're heading towards that dormancy period, and things change for us. So fertilising starts to not be effective. And again, this is all my opinion, my approach to things. I find that fertilising during this winter period is a bit of a waste. So there's no point doing it. You're not going to get big bang for your bucks, and you're going to spend time and effort getting these things, and you're not going to get a return on it. Your trees aren't going to get anything out of it really. So I'd suggest now is about a good time to start looking at removing fertiliser from your trees, because it's just going to stay wet on top of wet soil already, and that's when the rot starts to happen, and which is our biggest thing that we're looking to avoid at this time of the year. No matter where you are, you don't want your roots to rot because they're sitting in soggy wet soil. So linked with that goes the caution about watering. Very much will be monitored now. You've got to be careful. It might be spot watering different trees, different varieties, different species, especially the Australian natives. They may get a vastly different treatment at this time of the year as to what your deciduous would, for instance, that don't have any more or leaf structure. But anyway, that's where we're at. So with the podcast, let's get into it. I want to talk about an approach to developing your bonsai that I use and get it into manageable components. It comes from experience I've had with people recently where we're talking about pines, and it's the same similar message popped up about I can't see what this tree is going to become. I can't see the end result, and that's really common. And a lot of that comes with experience and doing a lot of work on different trees and seeing them for a very long period of time. But I don't think necessarily you have to see the ultimate end result. So I want to talk a bit about that. I want to talk about perspective changes as well, and making sure that we've got things covered. And when you do look at your tree from a design perspective, you make sure that you tick all the boxes to say I've thoroughly analysed this tree. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. So let's get into it. I've been doing a lot of work on pines lately, as you can guess, a lot of plucking work, and I like to think that I'm pretty vigilant on how I check my trees daily and how I look at them, and I'll get up close and personal with them and make sure that they're all okay. And even though there's a lot, I like to give them all individual time. And you know what makes me really, really angry? There's two things: windswept and caterpillars. I'm joking about windswept. I love windswept. You know that. I was just joking, so please don't get upset. But no, caterpillars. When I work on my pines, sometimes the more developed your trees become, obviously the denser they become, the more foliage there is, and no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, And this time of the year is a good reminder for me when this sort of thing happens. But you're getting close to a branch and you start looking at it and you can't see that a caterpillar's got in there and suffocated an entire bud or a few buds to draw in and make its nest and killed them because it's too dense in those areas, until you're actually right there with your tweezers pulling it apart going, what is that? And every time it's caterpillars. I've had it on a couple of trees, and I'm on the front foot with a lot of things that I do with my trees in regard to pest management. And it's not the end of the world, but it just makes me so annoyed that these things happen. And it's twofold. One, to let everyone know that listens to the podcast that may have had this happen as well. It happens to everybody, so don't feel bad about it. And it is a bit of a setback when it does happen because they do kill over time. They suffocate and kill the sections of the tree where they make their little nest, and they feed off that part of the tree, and eventually it dies. But it means that even though we're heading to a quieter time of the year as things slow down, as the days get miserable and wet and short, and for me, it's not an ideal time to be getting out there, in the morning when it's dark, or at night when you get home from being out all day at work and walk around the yard. It's the last thing I feel like, especially if it's raining. But you can't take your eye off the prize. You can't let your trees slip to second place because it's not convenient and it's not comfortable for you. And you just need to, every time I see it, every time it happens to me on my cedars or my pines, I remind myself, don't take your eye off it. You've got to be vigilant. No matter how good your approach is, no matter how thorough everything is that you do, you're still going to have these issues where you're going to get caught by surprise. So stay on it. Anyway, getting into the section of the podcast I wanted to talk about before I had my rant about caterpillars is to talk about how to develop your bonsai strategy that can often be useful when you can't see the end result. And, early on during bonsai life, a year can seem like a really long time. I guarantee you that as you get towards, you mature in your bonsai life, a year is nothing. A year in the life of a bonsai is, seriously nothing. For a pine, that's what we've been talking about a lot. For a pine, it's 2 lots of work. It's a needle plucking, bud selection, wiring, and then it's decandling in another 6 odd months, and that's it. That's all that happens. Maybe a repot in there as well, but it's really, you're not doing a hell of a lot of work with the trees throughout the year. You're appreciating them, you're enjoying them, you're loving them, you're spending time with them, you're fertilizing, all that stuff, but really there's not a lot of work that gets done inside a 12-month period. So it can be, I can appreciate that it's really difficult to say, okay, well, in 3 or 4 years' time, this little bud here will look like this, when you haven't seen what a bud can do over that period of time. So you need to break down the development of your trees into little bite-sized chunks, right? Into manageable, achievable goals. They don't need to be massive. I love goal setting. I love planning. I love thinking about the future with my trees. It's a form of mental stimulation that I really appreciate and I really enjoy. And do they all finish the way that I think they should in my head? No, of course they don't. There's no way. There's no way you can be working with a living form and guarantee that things are going to grow exactly the way that you think they will in your head. You can have an idea, you can get close, but you can never say exactly what's going to happen. A meteor can fall out of the sky and take off your key branch. What do you do then? Put it in the bin because you can't achieve that objective? There's no, it doesn't happen like that. So you just keep changing and evolving and doing what's best. But I think that from your own personal satisfaction and to be able to tick a box and say, yes, it did that, break it down to a seasonal thing. So if you're working on trees now and you're wiring and shaping and, you're setting your structure and you're sort of like, oh, geez, I'm not sure long-term what's going to happen with this branch. Is it going to be a key branch? Is it going to be, a sacrifice? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? How much is it going to grow? What's going to develop? Just break it down and say, okay, well, if this branch in spring does this, then I'll be happy. It might only have to grow 5 centimetres. Or it might have to divide into two. Two buds start to grow in that area. Perfect. Tick the box. You've done it. That's step one with your plan. You don't need to say, in 5 years' time, this branch has got to have the best ramification that you've ever seen and needs to be an extra 22.5 centimetres longer than what it currently is, and then my silhouette will look like this. You can have those plans, and they're the ultimate goal. That's what you want to get to. Like I want to create the best bonsai in the world, and I don't know which tree it's going to be with that I'm working with. And it might not be one of mine. It might be someone who works with me, but that's my ultimate goal every time I put a tree in front of me is how do I make this the best bonsai ever? And are they going to get there? Of course they're not. And I'm realistic about that. I don't use it as something that's not achievable from the point of view that I will get upset about it. I use it as a driver to say, just keep going, mate. Just keep working harder. Just think about that next step. Take the little bite-sized chunk and go, yes, okay, so it's going to do this next. That's enough. But longer term, it's going to look like this beautiful butterfly that evolves and emerges from this little stick in a pot that I've got currently now. Might be 20, 30, 50, it could be way after I'm dust, but it doesn't matter. Like I said, I think the best part of bonsai is this planning and this development and seeing things happen before your eyes and getting, that relationship with the tree that, these bite-sized chunks become something that really make you proud. And it sounds, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not a bonsai lover, a tree lover, you're going to think I'm mad. You're going to think I'm crazy. But you develop a relationship with the tree, and when you work in conjunction with each other and you're doing your part of the bargain, you're fertilising, you're repotting, you're watering, you're giving it love, you're making sure it gets enough sunlight, and you're making sure that possums aren't ripping limbs off it every second day. And then the tree responds by going, okay, well, I'm in a perfect zone now. I'm in my sweet spot, so I will do this and I will grow like this. And I promise you that I won't let that branch die because it's important to you. And I will push resources there because you've pruned the areas that are getting too strong, but you haven't pruned the weaker areas. So I'll push resources there exactly like I'm meant to, and I'll live up to my end of the bargain. So I think that if you can not look too, if you're lost, like if you got the ability to look forward, then do it by all means. But I know that when you're at that point where you're seeing the end goal, these little steps along the way, they're incremental, and you sort of go, yep, tick, 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 and you can do it naturally and go, it's happening, it's getting there, it's doing what it should. When you can't see that, just break it into little chunks and go, okay, I just want to develop this section of the pad. I want a bit more volume in my pad. I don't want it to be quite so flat like a plate. All right, so what are you going to do? Or I'm going to wire it and shape it, and then when spring comes around, this is going to grow, and then when that grows, I'm going to prune it like this, and it's going to look like this. Perfect. That's a really short-term, achievable objective that anybody can set on any single tree that they've got in their collection. Make it that you're satisfied, but also that your tree can make you satisfied with how it's naturally going to develop. And I just find that those bite-sized chunks make it so much easier and so much simpler and so much more satisfying for you and for your bonsai. I really don't hate windswept. I love wind effect, but I don't hate windswept. So anyway, at this time of the year when you're doing lots of styling and shaping and positioning of trees, it can often be a bit static. And by that I mean, for me, I've got a tree, it's designed, I know what I'm doing, I bring it in, mind-numbingly pluck, cut, and take wire off, put a bit of wire on, reset the branches and go, yep, you're back to where you're on the path, you're on the plan, you're getting there, or you're there and I'm maintaining you. That's beautiful. But it's really important, I think, that if you are developing a tree, or if it's taking a step, or you're a little bit, it's not a finished tree yet. It doesn't need to not have a plan. It doesn't need to not be on a path. But if you're developing a tree and you're like, yeah, that's okay, that's all right, Getting there. And it doesn't matter. This is not about pines. It's just that this is something that's going through my mind at the moment, which is this podcast dump that I do of thoughts that I have throughout the week of working on lots of trees. But it's really important for when you're developing a tree or just to even check what you're doing. And I've talked about perspective before, but it was brought up to me recently. So I was overseas and we're on a bit of a cruise around an island, and someone said, "Oh, here comes this massive rock structure," and you come around the corner and go, "Yeah, that looks cool. Like it's just jutting up out of this beautiful, beautiful sea, beautiful clear water around. There's this beautiful ready coloured rock." And they said, "All right, so look at it now." And you look at it and go, "Oh my God, that's a rabbit. It looks exactly like a rabbit. It's like a 15-metre tall rabbit." And it's like, yeah, that's called bare rock. It's like, what the hell do you call a bare rock if it looks like a rabbit? I said, that looks exactly like a rabbit from that perspective. And they said, yeah, just hang on a minute, about 30 seconds. The boat keeps cruising around. You get to another point on that same rock, and it looks exactly like a grizzly bear, like this monstrous grizzly bear with its mouth open, snarling, nasty. It's like, oh my God. So that change of perspective, and I was on this cruise, and it was lovely. In the sunshine, shorts on, having a beer, looking at rocks. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, I grabbed my phone out and I thought, perspective, like this is really, that's an important thing, that changing of the angle of looking at something completely changed it. Completely changed this natural rock formation from looking like this beautiful rabbit with long, beautiful ears to getting around the corner and seeing an aggressive grizzly bear that's towering. It really sparked something for me. And I've had a weekend of pine classes and talking with a fellow looking at a tree. Yeah, okay, so you want to do some development work on this? Trunk line looks great. Yep, okay. What do you want to do with it? Okay, well, this is my front from here. It's like, okay, cool, I can see that, and that looks really nice. But I said, have you looked at it around a bit further? No, this is how it's in the pot, and that's how I look at it. So I said, okay, let me have a look, spin it around. We spun it around on the same sort of angle on the tree, but we also spun it around on the turntable, which I love these turntables. And it's so easy to sit static and just spin it around, and got it around to another corner, and I said, oh, okay, so let's mark this corner view here and go back to your view. So I said, now let's have a look. We've got the tree's about 50, 60 centimetres tall. Nice, beautiful, barking up trunk, movement on it. But as you looked at it from the original front, you had nice little movement down the bottom, gets to about halfway, and it looked like a straight line. Like you could get a ruler or a straight edge, hold it against the tree and go, so that part there now looks like it's just veering off to the left-hand side on a slight angle until it gets to up at the apex. So I said, now look at this, and we turned the tree about maybe 20 degrees to get round to the corner of the pot. And as soon as we came around there, that bottom movement changed, but the straight edge suddenly became dynamic and had movement left and right, backwards and forwards. And you looked at it and went, wow, it's like a complete, forgetting where the foliage is, just looking at purely at the trunk line. But seeing that change of perspective there was like, it was like the penny dropped. It was like, wow, I had never looked at it from that angle. I'd looked at it from the back, like front of the pot to back of the pot, and back of the pot, there was some scarring and swelling and didn't look nice. But once you rotated it around a little bit and got to that different perspective, the whole trunk line changed and became interesting. So I talk about putting on horse blinkers when you work on trees, like focusing solo on what you're working on right then and there. Don't think about all the work you've got to do. Think about the branch. Think about the bud. Think about what's right in front of you. Do that to the best of your ability, then go to the next one. And when you finish those two, go to the next two and keep moving. And all of a sudden you'll know that somewhere down the track you'll be finished and you'll have done a really good job. If you chop and change and jump around the tree, that's not going to work. When you're looking at style, movement, flow, direction of a tree, sometimes you've got to forget about where the foliage is. Like, ignore what it looks like here and now. If you're thinking of changing, and just see through with laser vision, see through to that trunk line and look at it from a different perspective. And the first one I always do is that spin around. Like, so a rotational view, you stay static, your head stays in exactly the same spot. You don't keep darting up and down and moving your head around. Stay in the same position and look for there's more often than not, there's probably one to two variables that I find with almost every single tree that I look at, where you go, that's the best that's available to me, without touching wire, without manipulating and all that sort of stuff. And there's generally one or two that I go, for the tree as it's structured right now, that one or that one's the best. And then you start looking, once you've got those couple of potential fronts, then I start looking at branch positioning and go, okay, well, this one works better because you've got that branch there. That other one, the trunk's beautiful, but there's no branching where you need it. So it's an impossible dream. But so then you come back to the best option and go, okay, that's the one that I would start to work with. But you've got to go further than that. When you start looking at perspective, look at angle changes on the tree. Get a lump of wood, get a wedge, get whatever it is, get a stone, get something, get your shoe, shove it under the side of the pot, whether it's to the left or to the right, and just see what it looks like. The new front and the existing front, or a potential front, just at a different angle. You're not locked into it. So if you put it up and you go, that's no good, cool. At least you've tried it. Tried it at a greater angle, tried it at a reduced angle. But these different perspectives that you look at, this can make the difference between a good bonsai and a great bonsai, to be honest. And it can also help you start the path for your tree a lot quicker. If you don't go through all these options of, tilting, angles, and also another one is your height. I find that having the work trolleys, I can put them up and I can drop them down. Well, if you can't, stand up, walk away, go to the other side of the room, squat down, stand up, look to the left, look to the right. The different perspectives on these things allow you to go, that's exactly what I want. That's the tree. I can see it in there now. And it might be that you need to still wire some movement into a trunk. It might be that you still need to do a hell of a lot of work to it, but there's a nice line on that trunk, a nice viewing angle, a nice nabari, a nice something that draws you in, that you go, that's it. And even if you still come back to exactly where you started, where the tree is positioned in the pot exactly as it is, fantastic. That's awesome. But just spend a couple of minutes going through the different options that you've got, just to make sure that you've done a thorough enough job. If you are going to change it, if you are going to make a change to the positioning of the tree, the angle, the tilt, whatever it is, doing that sooner rather than later means that you can start your bonsai, your tree, taking steps that are appropriate. Setting it up now, wiring your branches, not looking at these different possible options for fronts or angles or your perspective change, means that when you do come across it, maybe next year or the year after or somewhere down the track, because the tree's just not as good as what it possibly can be, all that wiring, all that structure setting that you've done needs to be manipulated. It needs to be changed, because once you tilt a tree, the branch angles that you've got, they might be too far down, or they might be too high up. So getting it right sooner rather than later means that you can start setting your structure perfectly for the vision that you have of your tree. And it doesn't need to be anything more than that. I talked about the bite-sized chunk. I think finding the angle or the interest point on a trunk line when you first look at it, or when you look at it at any point, is a bite-sized chunk where you look at it and go, that's it. That's so much better. It's nice. Just because you acquire or you have a tree sitting a certain way in a pot, it doesn't by any stretch of the imagination mean that you cannot change that. Changing angle or front is one of the easiest things that you can do. By far the easiest thing you can do. And it makes probably, I'm trying to think of other things that make as big a difference. I don't think there's anything that makes as big a difference, because the trunk is, first and foremost, the most important part of a bonsai. To me, like that nabari, that trunk line, that visibility through foliage, the quality of the trunk, that's key to successfully building a beautiful bonsai. And if you can change your perspective, do the rabbit to the bear trick, where you look around and suddenly the whole thing changes before your eyes, because you're looking at it with a fresh set of eyes from a different angle, a different height, a different tilt, whatever it is. I think that you can really achieve greatness with almost any of your trees, and just changing the angle of the tilt or whatever, that doesn't make a great bonsai. There's a lot more to it, but it's a bloody good step in the right direction for you and for your tree. Righto, folks, thanks for listening in to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I really appreciated you sticking around this long. I also have a bit of an announcement. A mate of mine that I studied with, who was working at ICN in Japan when I was over there so many years ago, I reached out the other day. It was really nice to have a chat with him. And he's working at a different nursery in Japan, and they're offering short-term stays for anyone that's interested in delving into bonsai life for, say, sort of a month-long period in Japan, really reasonably priced. It'd be a great experience, and I know John Milton, and he's a brilliant teacher and a fantastic bonsai practitioner. So if you're interested in that, just reach out to me through the socials, and I'll pass on some details. It's I know for me, doing that sort of thing was life-changing, literally life-changing. So if you are interested, it would be a great opportunity. Also, I mentioned it a while ago, I'm read lots of tree books, which again, if you're just listening to this podcast and don't have bonsai or love trees, then it must sound like the craziest thing. But anyway, there's this one called Tree Glee, and it's really nice. It's a good book talking about trees and tree lovers, and it just makes me smile thinking about it. But there's a section in there that sort of sparked interest with me where they talk about forest schools, which is where little kids get to go to spend part of their educational time in outdoor spaces with trees, in parks and in forests. And my youngest daughter is nearly a qualified teacher, and she does it with her kids that she works with, where they go and spend good chunks of time in local parks and climbing trees and just being outside, building resilience with nature and just doing that stuff that, I don't know, I look back to my childhood. I was laughing about it with someone the other day where we were talking about climbing trees, and I don't know, I can't remember the last time I saw a kid that had climbed a tree, but it was something that was just, it was something that I just did. I just saw a tree in the backyard. You sort of started looking for branches you could fly up. But anyway, it just really sparked something to me that it's like not a full circle moment, but it's a really nice component that people are getting to spend a lot of time at a really young age with trees. And part of what I do is I teach at a school with Year 9 boys that are off tap. Having been there myself, I can completely relate to them. But I do this thing where we develop bonsai together, and it's funny, I wish it had been offered to me, and to see these young men developing this skill of working with trees and respecting a tree for this really short period of time, and to come back week after week and to see the enthusiasm build with them, there's something special about trees. So anyway, you know how I feel. I know how you feel, but it's nice to see it happen at a really young age, and hopefully it's something that gets to grow and develop a burning fire inside people's bellies. This tree love, and the world will be a better place as a result of it. Anyway, I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. Thank you very much for listening in. Love the appreciation, love the involvement. Please reach out to me if I can ever help with anything. Be back next week. Until next time, happy bonsai.